Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for coming to the session. Foundational map design principles and how we applied them to the redesign of our core styles. My name's William Davis. I'm on the map design team at Mapbox. And yeah, I'm super excited to nerd out with you about all the stuff we've been working on for the past year, roughly. So what are the Mapbox core styles? Going from top left to bottom right, we have Mapbox Streets, which is our general use case based map style. Really tries to strike a nice balance of maintaining sort of the road network for navigation while also making it easy to search for points of interest, and also just having a nice general beautiful aesthetic for overlaying any sorts of data on top of that information. Next, in the center there is Mapbox Outdoors. And this really focuses on more rural areas, outdoors, and really highlights terrain and trails and things like that. And for this update, we've really learned a lot from partnering with customers like Strava and All Trails to sort of make that as good as it can be. For satellite streets in the top right there, it is showcasing the beautiful satellite imagery that we have available, but giving a bit more context with our streets V8 data. So you can see there's still points of interest, but things like the road network will fade out as you get to high zoom levels, so that you can actually see the details of like an actual roadway or sidewalk or park. Then we have Mapbox Light and Dark, which are likely our most popular base map styles because they really make it so easy to throw your data on top of it, and they also blend really nicely into websites, especially if you have a light or a dark mode. And in Mapbox Studio, it's also extremely easy to sort of manipulate all of the colors in Mapbox Light or Dark just by changing a single color prop. And then we have our Navigation Night and Navigation Day, which like the title of the style are focused mostly on in-car navigation, and there's larger icons to make it easier to see highway shields and a more pronounced road network. But today I'm going to talk to you about Mapbox Streets V12. As you can see, as this is scrolling down, it's showing sort of the difference between what we had in V11 and what we have now in V12. This is work that is not just done by the map design team. There's 7 of us approximately, but this is work that was collaborated with the rendering teams, with GLJS, GLNative, the studio team, the base map team, roads team. This is all everything coming together to create this very fresh new take on Mapbox Streets. So before joining Mapbox, I used Mapbox for a number of years, but I didn't really understand necessarily how complex it is to create a general use case based map, and how important the data is to cartography or to web cartography. Not much is possible unless the data is there in a very specific format for you to be able to generate a nice looking base map. So Mapbox Streets is built off of 3 main tile sets. So here we're showing, this is Mapbox Terrain V2. This is a newly introduced tile set, Bathymetry V2. And so Terrain V2 has a lot of land cover data, some land use data as well, contours, and also hill shade polygons. So this is really allowing you to make these beautiful views from low zoom levels. We introduced the bathymetry tile set, which is showing a subtle underwater depth layer for low zoom levels, so that these globe views can be as pretty as possible, and also give a bit more context, especially when you're over like something like the Pacific Ocean. Without that sort of subtle detail, it's really hard to even know where you are located in the Pacific, for example. And then there's Streets V8, and I've shared some links with Steph. So maybe in the chat, you could also share a link to the tile sets that are available to any customer. But Streets V8 is really what powers our Streets V12 style and the majority of our styles at Mapbox. So this contains place labels, contains the road network, boundaries, land use, points of interest labels. This is really, what is generating or powering these maps. And like I said before, the base map team was able to put a lot of effort into updating this data set for us so that we could make the sort of improvements that we wanted to. So the redesign of Streets wasn't really a priority necessarily, but roughly a year ago, Taya, one of the senior map designers on our team, for Hack Week, which is something we do once or twice a year, said, I see so much opportunity in updating our core styles and especially Streets. We have a lot of land cover data that we're not really exposing in the style. And there's also all sorts of, pedestrian enhancements we can make by just including some like easily introduced data that's easily available through OSM or elsewhere. So Taya followed these main principles. So we wanted to update the colors. That was first and foremost to be a bit more vibrant, but also make certain aspects more subtle. We also wanted to introduce some new features, like you'll see later, we introduced like residential boundaries and some more land use types. And we also wanted to make sure that performance was improved. So Streets V11 was created, over 3 years ago, and we learned so much from collaborating with the GLJS team and other teams to understand that styles need to be created in a way that makes them most performant through better expression writing, through more performant filtering. You sort of want to structure them going from more specific to less specific. And Steph, I have another link to share, which is sort of how those improvements can quickly increase the rendering performance of your style. So these are things we all wanted to introduce into the style. And then we also, noticed that a lot of our customers are really focusing on mobile and wanting to make the street style more tappable and more friendly on a mobile device. So sort of reimagining what the Maki icons could look like. So again, we refreshed the color palette. We introduced some really interesting data like commercial boundaries. So you can sort of see intensities of activities of points of interest within higher zoom levels over cities. We also had this amazing opportunity with Globe View to really make low zooms, as pretty as possible. So adding sort of the atmospheric properties by default, defaulting to that Globe View, and adding things like bathymetry and more land cover data to really make those views sing. And we also improved things like the road style and the structure of roads so that they're a bit easier to understand for customers if they want to dive into the component itself. And we improved icons. We sort of reimagined how icons are generated in Mapbox Studio. So now they aren't all sort of baked into one sprite or raster image. These are sort of generated on the fly now in Studio, so you can manipulate the background and the shape and the colors a lot more dynamically than you were able to before. And we've also improved the pedestrian experience, so adding crosswalks and also showing better like pedestrian polygons and introducing entrances to buildings as well. And before diving too deep into this work, we also wanted to compare to competitors. So we built some in-house tools to sort of compare and see where Mapbox had opportunities, where we were doing better than others, and how we could start making asks for certain types of data so that we could still compete with what was out there. And then of course all of this had to be built on Mapbox core style components, which is how we structure our styles in Studio. And components are summarized here. This is a screenshot from Mapbox Studio. And you can see that all of this can be manipulated in Studio. So we presented this really nice general use case street style, but everything can be manipulated. You can turn on and off transit, turn on and off train, manipulate the place labels as you want, change the language. So when going into this, we really had to work within this environment to make sure that whatever we created would still be able to be easily editable and accessible to users in Studio. Steph, I think I gave you a third link there, which is like a nice slide comparison between Streets v11 and Streets v12. If you want to look at it as I'm talking through this as well, go for it. But I just wanted to go through the different like zoom levels of sort of the subtle improvements we've made to Mapbox Streets in particular and to the other core styles. So the biggest one is supporting globe view. So you can see with streets, outdoors, satellite streets, Mapbox Light, Mapbox Dark, they all have their own unique atmosphere settings now. So if you start with a globe view and don't set an atmosphere, you'll end up with a blank background. But now, starting with streets or outdoors, you'll have this beautiful space. Or if you're using more of a data visualization type layer like Mapbox Light or Dark, you'll sort of begin with this blank canvas. And this also translates into high-pitched views at high zoom levels. And you can see how that atmosphere transitions into fog, and you can see that they're each, have a unique setting for each of our core styles here. And this is just showing like that transition here, which was made possible by the GLJS team, and I think is just so beautiful and really just works so well. And it's obviously really tricky to figure out, what is the ideal time to make this transition, but I think it turned out great. So yeah, some other low zoom improvements. Like I said, we've added this very subtle bathymetry layer. We've added continental labels to just add a bit more information at these low zoom levels, which we expect more people will engage with because it's so fun to interact with the globe itself. We've also just exposed a bit more of that land cover data, give it a bit more contrast, also some more vivid colors, so that it just looks a lot more bright and green and fresh. And just zooming in a bit closer, we've also prioritized major settlement labels over states, for example, or provinces. We know that people like to zoom into cities. We know that that's where tiles are being loaded the most. So we know that for someone to navigate from like this zoom level, maybe they don't know where a city actually exists within like a state boundary or provincial boundary. So having it easily accessible to zoom into these points of interest is extremely important, and this just makes it so much easier to get there. Here you can also see that we've adjusted the hierarchy of our labels. States are a bit more subtle, while major place labels are a bit more pronounced. We have a subtle low zoom motorway, which I think does a good job of showing the interconnectivity of cities, and also really highlights urban and rural areas and sort of these like lower to mid zoom levels. And this is just the same zoom level, but over Europe, just so you can see, how these sort of translate. And I think this does such a great job of really showing how these places are connected. And if you're routing from Paris to Madrid, now you can see that road network at the zoom level. Another improvement that I think it works really well is adding these residential areas. So areas of population or urban centers. are now represented with these light gray polygons. And anything outside of it is now land cover data. So you get this nice contrast of rural and urban, and again feeds into that that goal of making it easy for someone to zoom into a city or where we know people want to zoom into and know what they're trying to find. I think this is such a good example too. Same zoom level, but now we're in Northern England, and this just like, you know, really easily demonstrates that these are the areas of urban activity, and these are more remote regions of the UK. Another example in the Bay Area, similar aesthetic. This is zooming in a bit more, looking at Detroit and sort of a border with the United States and Canada, and you can see we've added a bit more color there, and again showing this like divide between residential and rural. I just think these are such good examples of the subtle improvements we could achieve just through harnessing the land cover data and adding these residential boundaries. And then here's a close-up of San Francisco. You can see commercial areas are highlighted with this light yellow. So you've now zoomed in from a low to mid zoom level, you've gone into a city. Now you have these yellow highlights to say these are, you know, areas of high activity or clusters of point of interest. You'll likely want to zoom into these areas. And we've made points of interest labels a bit more scannable and easy to read by using more classifications and coloring and adding a background color as well. We've also introduced industrial areas, also an important land use class to introduce. They might actually be places that you want to avoid if you're a pedestrian, or you know, might add just a bit more detail as to how a city is laid out. Industrial areas can, you know, represent huge areas, and it's just good to know that, you know, it might be a food desert or some other reason why you might want to avoid that area, or a reason why you might go to for picking up packages or making sorts of deliveries. And we also really wanted to focus on improving pedestrian areas. So adding crosswalks, adding pedestrian polygons, or making them blend into the background a bit more. We saw a big opportunity to improve these high zoom levels, just to make the pedestrian experience that much better. And again, all of this is customizable in Studio. This is just a template. Anything can be turned on and turned off. In Studio, we try and make it as easy as possible to toggle things and to make things editable, and give you sliders to adjust the sizing of things. Point of interest icons, like I said, we've sort of reimagined how these icons are rendered. So now you can change the background shape. You can scale icons to be really big and easy to tap. You can increase the label density, and you can also, you know, adjust the color of these point of interest icons based on classification a lot more easily. And color components also make it so easy to make drastic changes to your map style. So colors usually cascade onto other elements of the map. So if you change the water color, you're now going to be changing bathymetry and the ocean depth as well. And this usually works for the majority of the color props we have available. And it's super easy to get started. If you are just doing a simple Mapbox GLJS map, you can just change Streets v11 to Streets v12. Or in Mapbox Studio, you can just start a new Streets template and publish and use that style and keep editing it. And thanks. I'm open to any questions.
Feel free to put your questions in the chat or unmute yourself. All right. We have one in the chat here from Ryan. Do you find that most people use the base maps or customize?
That's a good question. When people use Studio, we know that people will make small changes for the most part. Like one of the most popular things is to turn on 3D buildings, for example. But we find that most people building applications will usually just stick with the Mapbox Streets style, or like I said, Mapbox Light and Mapbox Dark are very popular. So yeah, I'd say most people stick to the templates.
Next question from Stephen. Will you show that slide comparing your charts with your competitors again?
Yeah, for sure. Let me make sure I can go back here. Is there a follow-up question, or just wanted to?
I think that's it. And then
okay.
There's the next one from Edward. Is it possible to copy and paste style from one map to another?
Sorry, say that again.
Is it possible to copy and paste style from one map to another?
In Studio, you can duplicate a style. You also are able to use the JSON editor in Studio, which allows you to grab sort of an entire fill color expression, and you can just copy and paste that into a new style. Also within a style, you can there's an ability to copy a style from a specific layer. So I'd say those are a couple of options of way to copy specific expressions, and then also ways to copy an entire style in Studio.
Great. Then from Evan, is there a latest link, or do you need to specify the version?
Yeah, if you maybe I can find the link, but if you go to the styles page on Mapbox in our documentation, all of the styles have now been updated to the latest. But if you have an application, you can just change V11 to V12, and you will then start seeing the V12 style in your app.
Great. And then from Tom, what would you love to add to the streets map, but don't have data for?
That's a good question. I would love to continue seeing improvements to high zoom levels. I think like getting sidewalk data is like something I would love to see for pedestrian experiences, and just easier. It would be such a easy, great improvement for pedestrian navigation.
Great. And one from Bodan. Can you extrude landscape in Studio styling as it is real world?
Extrude landscape in Studio. Oh, like turn on 3D terrain? But I'm taking away from that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. In Studio, it's quite simple. You just click on the 3D tab, and then you'll have the ability to turn on 3D terrain with a toggle, and then you can just set the amount of exaggeration you want. Yeah.
Question from Vladimir. Are there any plans for deeper integration with 3JS and DREI renderer in particular to get more immersive 3D objects on a map?
Yeah, not specifically 3JS, but if you saw at the end of the keynote there, Will White was previewing sort of our plans with the next iteration of core styles, which is 3D core styles, and we've been working a lot on creating these new 3D features and 3D styling, and it looks pretty cool and a lot different than what you're used to. So yeah, keep your eyes open for that for sure.
All right, we're all caught up in the chat questions. Thanks y'all for submitting in your comments. Thank you for your time and updating us on all what Mapbox is doing. Comment from Tom. Thanks, Will.